Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, folks, it's going to be some technical difficulties. As you know, I would not normally be coming in on phone, but it is what it is. So, good evening. I'm going to read tonight's agenda into the record. Okay, City of New Haven Board of Alders notice. Board of Alders notice New Haven. The Health and Human Services of the New Haven Board of Alders will hold a workshop on Tuesday, December 29th at 6 p.m. via video conference. Please click this URL to join, and the URL is posted online, or you can dial in at 929-205-6099 and enter the web ID as listed on the posting. Or if you're joining us by audio only, the password is 947-729-75. The item that is on the docket for tonight, on this 29th day of December 2020, is to receive and discuss the report of the New Haven's Racism as a Public Health Issues Working Group recommendations. Please note, public comment will not be accepted at this workshop. A hearing with opportunity for public testimony will be scheduled at a future time to be announced. Per the order of the Honorable Darrell J. Bracken Jr., Chair of Test, Honorable Michael B. Smart, City Clerk. For disability-related accommodation, please call 203-946-7833 voice or 203-946-8582 TTY prior to the meeting. And at this time, I would like to introduce members of the Health and Human Services Committee, starting, well, whoever would like to start can start. State your name and your ward number.
Stephen Winter, Ward 21.
Ellen Cupo, Ward 8.
Eli Sabin, Ward 1.
Smith, Ward 30.
Are all the Health and Human Services Committee members introduced? Okay. Hearing no objections to that, I will now acknowledge colleagues that have joined us for tonight. Alder Honda Smith, Ward 30. Alder Abby Roth. Alder Carmen Rodriguez. Alder Sal DeCola. And Alder Ann Toombs. Thank you all for joining us for tonight. As many of you all know and recognize, this resolution and item has been a long time coming, and I am very happy to introduce the members of the Racism as a Public Health Working Group. I serve as its chair, but obviously I'm running this meeting. So I will ask my colleagues from the working group to be added to the room. And once they are added to the room, they will all state their name and addresses for the record. I believe they've all been added. It looks like it, at least. So I'll start with my honorable colleague, Alder Carmen Rodriguez, and then you just go one after the other to state your name and address for the record.
Thank you so much. It's Alder Carmen Rodriguez, Ward 6, 71C Street, obviously in New Haven, Connecticut.
Good evening, Darcy Cobbs Lomax, 28 Caitlin Circle, Naugatuck, Connecticut.
Good evening, Natasha Ray, 11 West Street, East Haven, Connecticut.
Good evening. My name is Mehul Dalal. I'm the Community Service Administrator for the City of New Haven, 115 Linden Street in New Haven.
Good evening, Maritza Bond, Health Director for the City of New Haven, 784 Quinnipiac Avenue, New Haven, Connecticut.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brita Roy at 256 Yale Avenue, New Haven, Connecticut.
Good evening, Alicia Santilli, 235 Woodward Avenue, New Haven, Connecticut.
Okay, I believe that was all the members, the present members of the working group at this time. I would ask a representative to please introduce the item for tonight's agenda.
Thank you, Alder Braheen. So again, Natasha Ray. And so on July 6, 2020, the New Haven Board of Alders passed a resolution declaring racism as a public health emergency. Simultaneously, the New Haven Board of Alders initiated a working group on the same topic. The Racism as a Public Health Emergency Working Group has been charged with developing a set of recommendations to submit to the New Haven Board of Alders. Members of the working group we have all introduced ourselves, but again, the Honorable Darrell Braheen Jr., Maritza Bond, Director of New Haven Health, Darcy Cobbs Lomax, Director of Community Connections and Social Impact with Yale New Haven Health System, Dr. Mehul Dalal, the Community Service Administrator for the City of New Haven, Brita Roy, Assistant Professor of Medicine and Epidemiology and Director of Population Health at Yale School of Medicine, Alicia Santilli, Director of Care, Community Alliance for Research and Engagement, and myself, Natasha Ray, Director of New Haven Healthy Start. After several meetings and a public hearing that took place from September through December 2020, we would like to present recommendations in the following areas. And I just want to acknowledge that there are about 3 to 4 recommendations per category. So I'm just going to review the category, and I trust that the subcategories will be available for others to view. So the first one is institutional commitment, and it speaks to revamping the affirmative action office within the city. The second is the COVID-19 response. The third is health and healthcare. There are also recommendations around mental health, economic security, housing, law enforcement, food security, food systems, as well as transportation. I would also like to acknowledge some of the partners who
Looks like Natasha's connection may have dropped off. I can text her. Alicia, do you want to, are you able to continue?
Yep, that's okay. Thank you. We'll just allow a few minutes for us to get through the technical difficulty. Thank you. And while we wait, I'd like to acknowledge my honorable colleague, Alder Frank Douglas. Thank you for joining us.
It looks like Natasha's power suddenly went out because there was an accident. I'm checking to see if we should just continue without her if she thinks she can log back in. Okay, we should continue without her.
Okay. Continue. Who would like to continue?
I guess I can start. I think Natasha was just about to acknowledge some additional partners who contributed to the writing of these recommendations, including Kimberly Acosta, part of the City of New Haven Food Policy Analyst, Alice Forrester, CEO of Clifford Beers, Marquita Taylor, Assistant Director of Health Equity Leadership Programs at CARE, Genesis Vicente, REACH Program Manager at CARE, the full REACH Steering Committee, as well as the City of New Haven Legislative Services. We would like to formally submit the recommendations for the records.
So noted, and I will have this submitted through staff as it already has been. Thank you so much. It has been accepted. Now, as to the remainder of this meeting, I would like to direct the following to members of the committee. You all have received the full recommendations. There is quite a bit that is there to go through. So if you have any questions, I'm asking that these questions please be concise. I'd rather not have to read through the document or have the committee read through the document, knowing that we have all of the information right in front of us. So if you have any inquiry, please be specific. Otherwise, I will have to redirect your question and submit it in an email form to the working group. Now, are there any questions from members of the committee? Alder Cupo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank everyone on the committee for this really excellent work and on such a short turnaround and in a truly remarkable and difficult year. I wondered, I went through it and I thought a lot of the recommendations are really excellent. And I wondered if the committee had thought through or had made a list of things that are like much more immediate or things that are targeted for longer execution. Because there are a number of them, but I think, you know, one thing that stands out to me right now is under the COVID response, having, I'm sorry, my dog is crying. He doesn't know where the baby is. He's with my mom. It's fine. The recommendation about testing in all of New Haven public schools, teachers, staff, and students, I thought was really excellent and something that in my mind with I think some of the money that we've applied for through CARES could be utilized for that, but I wondered what was the committee's recommendations, thoughts, hierarchies in terms of immediate or maybe long-term. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any members of the working group can feel free to answer the question.
I can start and folks can jump in if there's something COVID specific. I would defer to Director Bond. The committee members in reviewing and making these recommendations, we did not have an opportunity to explicitly prioritize immediate versus longer term goals, but I think that is a very good suggestion. specifically as it relates to COVID, because as everyone on this meeting knows, that the situation evolves pretty dynamically, and we need to act pretty quickly. So again, if there is an opportunity, for example, to move forward on that recommendation, we wouldn't necessarily wait. We would capitalize on the opportunity, for example, that you mentioned, the funds that might be available through the new federal action. So.
I agree with that. Thank you, Dr. Dalal. Alder Kupo, I think I would just add, yeah, it's really difficult to figure out exactly what to prioritize. Obviously, COVID-19 response is a huge priority. And I would say the revamping the Affirmative Action Office would probably be the next priority, since that is an office that could potentially take on a lot of the recommendations that are listed here.
Anyone else from the working group would like to comment? Okay, seeing none. Alder Kupo, do you have any follow-up question?
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't at this time. Sorry about that noise.
No problem. What a night this is turning out to be, folks. The technology. I can't see you guys really in dogs. I love it. Okay. Any other questions or comments from members of the committee? Again, please be concise.
I have a couple questions, Mr. Chair.
Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the mental health recommendations was the creation of a universal screener for trauma. Could you just explain more about what that means for community providers to use with their clients?
I'll take a stab at that, although that is a recommendation that Alice Forrester put forth and that we included in the recommendations. I believe the intent behind that is for the various social service and mental health agencies across the city to have a universal tool to use. As with many social services and mental health services, there are often screeners that we have to use to determine whether or not a person is eligible for a certain service. So one way to streamline systems and make sure that people are being served equitably is to have universal systems in place like this. I think that's probably the intent of what Dr. Forrester was getting at.
And if you're asking about if there are kind of specific screens that should be put in place, I don't think that it was specified, but there are certainly a number of established, validated screeners available for trauma. I think in the report it mentions adverse childhood experiences, that's kind of general, but that is kind of a well-known, well-validated screener for children to understand if they have experienced trauma. And then there are also more dedicated screeners for things like anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. There are a number potentially of them that could be used.
Thanks. What with the recommendations in section number 3, it says that the health department is pursuing public health accreditation, and then talks a lot about health in all policies. I know the health department has so much going on right now, but I was wondering like what the status of that is and how this board could support that agenda.
Hi, if I may have the floor. So the health department is gearing up and getting steps in place, standardizations in place so that we can prepare for accreditation readiness. And so that is a goal, which is going to be more of a long-term goal. We have many things to put into place. Once the health department is ready, we will need resources to be able to apply for national accreditation, which is a fee associated with that. However, there are a number of steps that we need to take prior to that. And so we are currently gearing up, for example, strategic planning as one piece to set some priorities for the health department, and also ensuring that there are other components in place. And as far as health and all policies, that's another avenue for the health department as a goal to ensure that health is considered in every aspect of the governmental system, making sure that any public health implications are considered before decisions are made.
Thanks. Thanks so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Very good questions. Any other questions from members of the committee? Considering tonight's attendance with our fellow colleagues that have joined us, I would like to open the floor to my colleagues who have joined us that are not on the committee. I'm going to limit you guys to 2 questions each if you do have any. Just state your name for the record because I can't really see you. Oh, actually, Alder Sabin, who's a member of the committee, has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a question about one of the points under one of the recommendations under economic security. It says adopt permanent paid leave policies, and I was wondering whether that was targeted at city government or at local partners, or if someone could explain a little bit more about what that means.
I can take a stab at that. I believe we had a discussion around leaving this intentionally vague, if I remember correctly, and somebody else on the committee might have a better recollection. There is some state policy that's coming down, so part of it would be to support that state policy from the city level, I believe explore what could be done at the city level, but other members of the committee, please feel free to, of the task force, please feel free to correct me.
I'll just say I believe you're correct in that impression. We did want to leave it broad. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. So I'll open it up to other colleagues that may have questions. We'll limit you to 2 questions. Oh, and I must acknowledge my vice chair has joined us, Alder Hurt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any questions from any colleagues? Okay, seeing none.
Alder Cupo has her hand up, sir.
Okay, thank you. Alder Cupo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a question about what next steps might look like for the committee, given these recommendations. What do next steps look like for each of these, for each bucket?
Oh, that's a great transitional question. So I would like to transition on that question, but I do want to see if there's any other additional questions from members of the committee or colleagues. Okay, great question. So at this time, seeing that this is a workshop and not a public hearing, we will not be accepting public testimony. We did, for the record, we did receive suggested changes on some language from Yale New Haven Hospital. I'm not sure if members of the committee received that minor change.
I'm not sure what you're talking about. We're talking.
Okay.
Which minor change, sir? I'm not sure which one you're referring to.
Yale New Haven Hospital submitted an amendment to one of the recommendations.
And Chair Brackeen, this is Darcy Cobbs-Lomax with Yale New Haven Hospital. I'm happy to speak to that suggested change if now is appropriate.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
You're welcome. So good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Darcy Cobbs-Lomax. I'm with Yale New Haven Health System. So the way that the wording is currently in the document, Yale New Haven System certainly supports the intent behind it. However, after discussion among colleagues and leadership, we would like to amend that language to read something as follows. Working in partnership with Yale New Haven Hospital, the Board of Alders will support efforts to align community health investments to support Black and Brown communities. Speaking on behalf of the health system, we really want to continue to develop further our partnerships with community entities, including CARE and other non-governmental organizations, as well as the health department, and certainly welcome this work group of the this committee of the Board of Alders to work with us as we think about our next community health needs assessment and health improvement plan, and how we best serve the needs of underserved communities, underserved neighborhoods in the greater New Haven community.
Thank you so much. Actually, I would like to ask, are there any questions from members of the committee about what's being proposed?
Darcy, would you mind repeating the updated language?
Sure, I'll read it slowly. Working in partnership with Yale New Haven Hospital, the Board of Alders will support efforts to align community health investments to support Black and Brown communities.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Alder Cupo has her hand up, sir.
Alder Cupo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify, so that language will replace the Board of Alders should assess Yale New Haven Hospital's community benefit requirements to ensure accountability, transparency, and alignment between its community health needs assessments, community health improvement plans, and allocation of community benefits dollars to ensure funds are strategically flowing into Black and Brown communities. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. If I may, I am concerned that the change in language really removes any teeth or legitimate accountability on the part of Yale New Haven Hospital. And so I would just caution my colleagues on the committee that I don't find that language satisfactory at all.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Alder Cupo. I am 100% agreement with Alder Cupo. There's Yale already have the language shows no accountability to us whatsoever, and I'm against that language. The language need to be changed back to the original version because at the end of the day, I am in the neighborhood of needs. I live in the Hill. I live on Congress Avenue. We have so many serious issues with health and human services over there. And Yale, although I want to say is a good neighbor, they have not shown me anything as far as being a good neighbor. And at this time, I will not I will not. And I urge my colleagues not to go along with that language. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. As along with the Robert's Rules of Orders that conducts this committee, just for the working to note, we would have to vote on such an amendment because it was not a part of the original language. So once we close the public portion of this hearing, the committee will have the opportunity to vote on the recommended changes to the recommendation. That's just a point of information. Any other members of the committee that have any questions?
Alder Brahim, this is Alder Carmen Rodriguez, if I may.
Yes, you may.
When did this come through? Did it come through in an email for those of us working on the task force? Because I didn't see anything come through prior to us having this meeting, so.
Yes, the email was sent approximately 2:05 p.m.
Okay. I'll check my mail again because I've been watching it all day for this meeting. Okay, I will check on it. Thank you.
I didn't receive that either. That's the final recommended language.
Yes, well, that would be only received by internal staff and
Oh, I see.
members.
Sorry about that. Thank you.
I'll just have to maintain some order. Any other members of the committee that has any question or comments? I did notice, I think Darcy's hand was up, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
May I respond, please?
Yes.
So thank you, everyone, for your feedback. What I can share this evening, without going into tremendous detail about where Yale New Haven's community benefit dollars land in our communities, is that we do have federal guidelines that we follow very strictly, and we really do adhere to with regard to how community benefit dollars are allocated into not just New Haven, but the 12 towns with which we are tasked with supporting through our community health needs assessment and community health improvement plans. Those documents are available on the hospital website, and they are not created in a silo. We create the community health improvement plan with community partners, including CARE, which Alicia Santilli is the executive director of. She's very much a part of that committee that puts the plans together and oversees how those plans roll out within our communities. We are open and are fully transparent as best we can be with where those dollars go, and are open to further discussions surrounding where those dollars go. But I do want to just reiterate that there are federal guidelines that stipulate how those dollars are spent and how those plans are put together.
Thank you. Okay. I would like to actually now go back to Alder Cupo's transitional question as to what next steps are for the recommendations. As any task force that has been deemed by the president of the Board of Alders to a said committee, this committee would be the Health and Human Services Committee. In this instance, it is our job to either approve or accept the recommendations as a whole and accept any amendments that may come with that during deliberation. At that moment, we will then approve or disapprove the item to go towards the full Board of Alders to then have a vote of the whole. Once that is done, it will be upon the Board of Alders to ensure that a commission is created, which is detailed in the recommendations, to take up the work and to ensure the enforcement and of the recommendations as accepted by the board of the whole. There are also recommendations that we need to take note of for our charter revision that will be coming up. I'm not sure when that date is, but it's soon. So it is our job to ensure as committee members, when that process happens, that we ensure to advocate for the items that need to be revised within the charter. Some things can be changed ahead of time, but it will take the initiative of this committee, the board, as well as members at large to propose those items. But today it's our job to either approve or accept the recommendations and to move them forward to the full board. Any questions? Oh, and in addition to that, there's no action that will need to be had. No formal action will be had by this committee on tonight. In addition to that, there will be a public hearing, as we already mentioned in the notice. Any
Chair
further
Brackeen,
questions?
Chair Brackeen, this is, if I may.
Say your name. I can't see you.
Sorry, this is Darcy Cobbs-Lomax with Yale New Haven.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yes.
I would like to withdraw the amendment. We would like time to work to revise the language. I would like the committee to know that Yale New Haven was not made aware of this language prior to the work group's meeting last week. So it was not shared with the hospital. However, I would like to withdraw tonight's amendment, and I'm asking for time to work with you all to come up with language that we can both agree upon.
Thank you so much. The hospital, I must admit, throughout this process has really stepped up as a partner in this process. And there is time to work on a compromise, I'm sure. But again, that'll be up to the board of the whole. There's no formal action that needs to be taken tonight. We're just either going to accept the recommendations as a committee, and then we will have a public hearing once this committee works on a more formal report to the board of alders as a whole. So there's still time. Oh, and I'd like to acknowledge the chairwoman of the Black and Hispanic Caucus, Alder Delphine Clyburn. Thank you for joining us. Any questions from members of the committee? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to close the public portion of this workshop. Any alder can help me in doing that.
Oh, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion that we close the public portion of this workshop.
Hearing it moved, is there a second?
Second.
Hearing it moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? We have closed the public portion of this hearing, which means only alders are allowed to speak at this time. For all those that are on the task force or members of the public, we thank you so much for joining us. And feel free to gain your time back if you would like to, or you can stick around and hear us talk. Like I said earlier, there is no formal action that will be taken tonight, except that this committee, I recommend, accepts the recommendations. As a committee, it'll stay with us, and we could, we will call a additional public hearing, because I feel like additional comment may be needed, and I feel like this will give the opportunity for us as a board to give our input as well. Any questions or comments about that? From members of the committee?
I agree with you, Chair.
Does everyone generally agree? I can't really see.
I agree with you, Mr. Chair.
I agree.
Yes.
I agree with you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you all so much. This was so tough here. What a night. But okay. So I'm gonna ask Al or Mickey or someone, what should we do now?
If you are accepting the report, you can just note that you're going to accept the report and forward it to the board so that it can be referred back to you officially so you can have your public hearing.
Understood. So I'll just do it a little more formally. I move to accept the recommendations of the working group, Racism Opposed Public Health Issue Working Group. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstention? All right, we have accepted the recommendations. The next step of this committee is to submit it as a communication to the president. Does anyone like to move that item to do so?
Mr. Chair, I move the item to be submitted to the president for recommendation.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Hearing it moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, friends, we've done it. We will be back with this item. I will, once the president redirects this to us, we will then call a public hearing, of which I encourage members of this board to take ownership of, like we have in the past on many other items. We want to hear the voices of the community as to feedback from what is being proposed. I will say there has been many voices that have worked on the initial recommendations, but I want to ensure, in particular, that communities who are most affected by this issue have a voice in this document. So, are there any questions, comments, or concerns about anything from members of the committee on tonight?
Made it very plain.
Thank you so much. So I believe this is, well, maybe it's the last meeting of the new year. I'm not sure. But if it's not, sorry about that. So I'll take a recommendation for adjournment.
Mr. Chair, I make a recommendation that we adjourn.
A motion would be better.
Well, make a motion, I'm sorry. I make a motion.
Second.
Hearing you move in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, okay. All right. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys.
Happy New Year's, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year's.
Happy New Year, everyone. Happy New Year, Mickey.
Happy New Year to everybody. I'm letting the press in because I want to ask them if they all have copies of the report.
Okay.
Does anybody in the press need the report?
Mickey. I didn't hear you, Mickey. My phone.
Oh, I'm letting the press in because I want to make sure they have copies of the report that we could get it to them so they can have it for tonight.
Okay.
I guess, does anybody in the press need a copy of the report? I guess not.
Great. Okay.
Good night, everyone.